I can't see my grandchildren, all because my son and me had a big argument, and it has to do with him being a thief. And I won't stand for it, I won't promote it, I raised him differently. I'm 56 and have never posted anything like this online. But I'm at my wit's end and I need advice, or maybe I just need to vent. Either way, here it goes. I just got off the phone with my son and he's asking me for money. At first, he didn't want to tell me what it was about or for, but after I told him there was no way I'd even consider it unless he told me, and he admitted what happened. Which, he got caught at work writing checks to himself. He's a bookkeeper at a hotel, and cooking the books to make it look like the expenses were legitimate. Obviously, I was speechless. I asked him how much were we talking about. He paused, took a deep breath, and said, Thousands? Thousands? 5? 10? 20? 25,000, he said. Oh my gosh! Oh my effing gosh! I should take a minute here to give you some background. First of all, I work in a bank. In fact, I'm the manager of a local branch. I work with money all day long, keep it safe, make sure no one does what my son did, basically. So you can imagine how I feel about stealing from work. Second, I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents, both deceased, came from the Azores before I was born. The immigrant dream, looking for a better life, money, stability, etc. My dad worked in construction and busted his butt to buy a house for us and make sure my older brothers went to college. Of course, there was no money left over for me, so I had to make my own work. I worked in factories, restaurants, clothing stores, everywhere, you name it, just to scrap enough money together for tuition. And I didn't want my kids to have to go through what I had to, so I set up an education fund for them when they were babies, for my son. Let's call him Jason. And his sister, let's call her Julia. My first husband was an alcoholic who stole all that school money to pay back debts he incurred while he was drunk. So again, you can imagine how I feel about stealing money. One more thing, this isn't the first time this has happened. Jason already got in trouble with the law for stealing from work when he was still living with me. That's right, he lived with me into his mid-20s while his sister left when she was 18 and put herself through college and is now a social worker. Still single, although I don't really blame her. When he was about 24, I came home from work and Jason was there in the living room. He's been crying. I asked him what's wrong and he tells me that he's been stealing merchandise from the warehouse where he worked, loading trucks. He had a buddy who would take the stuff and sell it. They've been doing it for years. Jason would even bring me presents from time to time, perfume, nice olive oil, candles, etc., and say that it was a bonus from work, a gift they received for hitting their monthly goals or whatever. I felt like the world's biggest idiot for having believed him. So, we went through this whole ordeal. The warehouse company called the cops and they arrested him. I bailed him out, but we got a lawyer. Of course, I paid for it, because Jason had already spent all his money that he stole. Because he was young and it was his first offense, I vouched for him. He didn't have to serve any time in jail or prison. Pay the money back, again on my dime, and community service for a year. It took us a while to bounce back from what, but we did. He's my baby. I'm his mom. It's always been like that, and when we were still living together, it was like we were roommates and best of friends. We'd watch movies together, cook together, paint the house together, all kind of changes when I met Rick. But I'll get into a moment. After the year of hell, things seemed to be getting better. Jason went to community college, got a diploma in bookkeeping, and got a job at the hotel. He met a girl, Krissy, who also worked as a server in the hotel lounge. They started dating and ended up getting married together. She seemed good for him, and we had a good relationship, me and Krissy. She even used to text me when things got rocky between her and Jason. He's always been difficult when he gets stressed and he goes into flight mode. I guess he broke up with Krissy a few times, but she wasn't having any of it. She was patient and made sure he came back. I thought that was good for him, and I felt useful being a shoulder for her to cry on. When they got pregnant, I was absolutely over the moon. They moved in with Jason's dad, which I thought was a bonehead move, since even though he's not drinking anymore, he's still a deadbeat who smokes a ton of pot and doesn't even work. But anyways, Lucas was born healthy, and I just adore him. Honestly, I never thought that I could love someone so much as I loved that baby. So these are all the things going through my mind while I'm on the phone with my son, and he's just admitted to getting caught stealing from work again. Like, dude, how is that even possible? So I take a deep breath and tell him I need some time to think it over. He does sound a bit angry, but he musters up an okay. After I get off the phone, I go to talk to my hubby, Rick. We're not married, but we've been together so long we might as well be. For years, he's been telling me that my son is only out for himself. It caused a lot of fights between us, and deep down I know he's probably right, but I can't admit it because it feels like I'd be giving up on Jason if I did. Rick met me when I was in a really dark place after the divorce. He helped me get back on my feet again, and in general is a really great man. It's just this one thing that we don't see eye to eye on. So, I tell Rick what just happened, and the first thing he says is, "Aw, babe, you can't help him." I think he means I shouldn't help him and start to argue. He stops me and is like, "No, you really can't help him. All your money's in ETF, and if you're to take it out now, you'd have to pay a penalty." See, Rick is a financial advisor, so it's no wonder this is where his mind went. I tried to argue a little, saying that I can take out a loan and refinance the car. He stops me, asks if I really want to go down that road. Basically, Jason doesn't seem to have learned his lesson at all. If I give him money now, who am I going to be benefiting? Not him, not my grandbaby. It would really be just for me, so I could worry less about my son. Boy, oh boy, that was a hard pill to swallow. I kept thinking about Jason in jail. Little Lucas without a father, but Rick was right. I could not keep enabling Jason. If he doesn't face the consequences, he might just keep on doing it. So I called Jason back and told him that I could not help him. I told him about the ETFs, although I didn't tell him about why I was afraid to help him. That it would be enabling him, and he was really quiet, and he said, "Okay, Mom, if that's where you stand." Then he hung up the phone. A few minutes later, I get a call from Krissy. She sounds really angry and mean, and she asks me if I know what I'm doing. That I'm going to ruin their family for a few $1,000s. I asked her if she realizes that this isn't me who is the one to blame. Jason's the one who took a risk and got caught, and now he's put his family in huge jeopardy. I tell her I love Lucas, and I don't want to see him hurt, but that I just can't, in good conscience, bail Jason out. Krissy starts talking about how Jason was only doing it to help his family, and she starts talking about inflation, how expensive baby stuff is, how expensive food is, how she hasn't been able to find a job, and all this pressure that's on Jason, etc., etc. I'm like, Krissy, I'd gladly have helped you with your budget and buying food and things for Lucas, and in the back of my mind I'm thinking, I know my baby boy, I know my son. I know that he's got a champagne taste on a beer budget, because he's always been like that. I've seen his new sneakers that he only wears once or twice, and I've seen the car he bought before he even had a driver's license, and once again I've never asked him where the money was coming from to pay for the stuff. Just look the other way like an absolute idiot. Krissy starts saying that she knows it's not me who won't give them the money. And that's probably Rick because he isn't family and doesn't have kids, so he can't understand. I asked her if she had asked her parents for money. Well, that shut her up. Krissy is estranged from her mom and her dad is unemployed. And I can tell she's getting ready to scream at me more, so I excuse myself and hang up. About a half an hour later, Rick and I were having dinner, and my phone started to blow up message after message. The notification sound just doesn't even play completely before the next message arrives. I go look out there, about 15 messages from Krissy. I can tell from the way they're written that she's typing in a fury and sending them without thinking. Stuff like, "Do you realize what a total ducking witch you're being?" And a list of reasons why I'm a witch. Stuff about how I'm going to ruin Luca's life before it even starts, just like I ruined Jason's life when I divorced his father. She's got all this ammo, and I guess from conversations with Jason, and she just starts lobbing it at me. I was negligent mother, and I had men in the house. I was, open to boys, and I left Jason home alone. All of this horrible stuff. She's not totally wrong. I did do some of those things, and I don't feel proud of them. The divorce was messy, and there was a time when I was a mess too. But I always provided for Jason and was there for him. He wasn't some latchy kid. I cooked and cleaned for him, and we spent quality time together. Did I go on a few dates once I was single? You bet your butt dollar I did. It was my coping. But it wasn't as if I had endless men parading through the home. Maybe one or two of them slept over and left before Jason got up. I even talked to him about it so it wouldn't be weird. I didn't justify myself to Krissy, though. I turned my phone on silent and let her get out of her system. But I was rattled. Rick could see how upset I was and poured me a big glass of wine. When dinner was finished and we'd done the washing up, I found the courage to look at my phone again. I immediately burst into tears when I read the last message, and it just said, "You'll never see Lucas again." Well, it's only been a few days, but I feel totally broken. Rick tries to talk to me, and I either ignore him or snap. I go to work, come home, eat, and go to bed, and when I'm not doing those things, I cry. I know I can't do anything right now, but I feel so horrible that I needed to post this. I do feel a bit better having written it out. Still, I can't get rid of this lingering feeling that I should have done differently. Did I make a mistake not giving my son the money? In the long run, I would have been okay. Maybe my retirement savings would have been a bit lighter, but at least my son would not go to jail. I'm terrified that I actually have ruined Lucas's life. Anyways, tell me I'm wrong, please. Update number 1. So, I just had a massive fight with Rick about Jason and the money. He did his whole "I told you so" routine without saying "I told you so." It makes me so effing mad. I mean, he says things like, "Are you surprised that Jason would continue to come to you in times of crisis if you made yourself so available last time?" Well, I get angry that I swore at him and smashed the plate on the ground. Rick just looked at me, then he put on his shoes and coat and left. That was a few hours ago. It's the first time I've acted like that, been violent in front of him, and I'm still fuming. Even though I know it's not Rick's fault. Part of me wants to pack up my crap and leave. Just hole up in a hotel myself, not talk to Jason, Rick, or anyone. Before the fight, I went and reread the messages from Krissy. I went back earlier in the text and looked at all the photos she sent me of Lucas, and I cried. Part of the reason Rick and I were fighting was that I told him that I was still texting Krissy. I just could not accept that she would ghost me after sending me a message like that. I wrote some long, very considered replies and hoped that if I reasoned with her, she would be open to talking. I said that even though I could not give them the money, I would help Jason with legal services and could babysit Lucas if Krissy needed to find a job. I would even help Krissy find a job if she wanted, and I would talk to Jason's employers if that could possibly help. Of course, she never replied. The messages just hung unread, and when I told Rick, he said that what I was doing wasn't much different from giving them money. It was still enabling, and worse, he said, because now they would think that I felt guilty, and that's why I was offering to help them in other ways. And the babysitting thing would just look like I was desperate to see Lucas. I told him that I was desperate to see Lucas, and that I did feel guilty. Rick said I had to stop feeling guilty and that he understood how much it hurt to not see Lucas. I said, "BS, you don't understand, you don't even have kids." He looked hurt. He said he didn't need to have kids in order to understand my pain. I just snorted. I was being a total jerk and I knew it, but I could not stop. I didn't want a lecture from Rick, I just wanted to be angry and not get shut out by Krissy. That's when he said the thing I wrote at the beginning about how I should not be surprised, and I lost my temper. I don't know what's going to happen when he gets back, but I'll keep you guys posted. Update number 2. Okay, so I'm sorry everyone that I did not make the post like I said I did, but I hope this one makes up for it. First of all, I should say we officially cut all ties with Jason and Krissy. I'm in a much better position now than when I wrote the last post, and Rick came home after my blow-up and we talked for hours. We decided that no matter what happens with Jason, Krissy, and Lucas, we need to focus on our own stuff and how this has affected us as a couple. And if that means cutting them off to save our relationship, then so be it. The next day we took the leap of, called some couples and therapists in our area. We got lucky and found one that was also a psychologist, and that's covered by my health insurance. Their office gave us an appointment that same week, and yes, it was a little scary how fast it was all moving. I've never done therapy and hardly ever talked to anyone about my messed up family situation. Rick said it would be okay and explained to me what would happen. He knew because he had been to family therapy with his parents when he was a kid. So we went to the therapist and it was actually amazing. I won't tell you everything we talked about, obviously, but it really put things in perspective. We got a second appointment and the therapist gave us homework for me and Rick to do. The second appointment wasn't quite as amazing as the first, probably because the real work was starting, but it was still good. I could feel that we were getting somewhere. It's been 4 weeks and 4 appointments, and I have to say that my relationship with Rick is the best it's ever been. It's honestly feeling even more exciting and wonderful than when we were first dating. Stuff in the bedroom is, oh wow. We've been talking about taking a year off and doing some of the trips we've always wanted to do, like, a tour of Southeast Asia. I haven't thought as much about the problem with Jason and Krissy, but whenever I think about Lucas, I still start to cry. It's hard to see other babies on TV and in the mall and stuff and not think about what I'm going to miss. Rick says I have to pretend that I'm not going to see him because there's no other way to not create expectations. And the expectation will absolutely kill me. The therapist agreed. I don't know how I'm going to accept his absence in my life because my first grandkid and I'm going to miss everything. I better not start writing about now or I'll start to cry again. Thank you all for your concern and kind words. If there's any updates in the near future, I will let you know. Update number 3. So, I had a huge shock today. I just gotten home from work and there was someone standing on my doorstep. It was Krissy. I didn't recognize her at first because she put on more weight since she gave birth. I got out of the car slowly because I wasn't sure what she was doing there and I wanted time to collect myself. For a second, I felt my heart fluttering because I thought maybe she had Lucas with her. It's been almost 4 months since I've seen him, and I follow her using a dummy account on Facebook and Instagram, and that way I get to see my grandson. He's already got his first tooth. He's sitting up by himself and all these things. It makes me feel like a total creeper that I'm watching him on the screen instead of holding him in my lap. But it's better than nothing. I was also sending anonymous gift for a while, but I talked to my daughter and she said to stop because, anonymous or not, Jason and Krissy are going to know who the presents are from, and they'll take it as a sign that I feel bad, which I don't. Julia also said she basically had not talked to Jason in over a year, except to congratulate him when Lucas was born. She told me that this was because every time they talked, he asked her for money, which I had no idea about. Anyways, I got out of the car, went up to my door, and asked Krissy if there was something that I could do for her. I was fully expecting her to get in my face, and I rang the doorbell so Rick could come outside and I would not have to be alone. It was only after that I saw his car wasn't parked in its usual place and he wasn't home yet. Krissy did not yell at me. However, actually, her demeanor had completely changed from the person who had sent me those messages. She was asking me how I was, apologizing for how long it's been since the last call, and she was acting like nothing had happened, like she'd never sent those terrible messages. I was gobsmacked. Suddenly, she started crying. She asked me why I hadn't called, and I told her what I rehearsed with the therapist and Rick. I loved them, her and Jason. Probably more Jason, but I didn't tell her that. And Lucas. But I didn't believe that if I gave them money, it would solve any problems. That Jason needed to work on himself and figure out how to live more honestly. He needed to recognize that the risk he took put other people at risk. Krissy didn't like that, I could tell, but she didn't say anything. She was still crying, and I asked her if there was something else she needed. She told me that Jason was going to plead guilty because the legal aid who had been assigned to him made a deal with the authorities, so he would not face more than a year in prison. I felt crushed when she told me this, but I kept my composure. Then I took a breath and said I was sorry and asked if there was anything else. I should mention again that my daughter Julia works as a social worker. She has a private clinic now, but she used to work downtown for social services and is still friends with all those people. It's probably not great that they do it, but every once in a while she hears things from them about people she knows. About a week before, she told me that she'd heard Krissy had her assistant cut off for lying on her application. So I wasn't totally surprised by what came next. Krissy said she was so sorry for coming to see me, but she didn't have anywhere else to turn. She had been looking for work and could not find any, especially when it was hard to find a daycare for Lucas. I asked her about social assistance and she said she was receiving it, but it wasn't nearly enough. That was a lie. She said she was in danger of not being able to pay rent, and that was a lie too. She lived with No in the house he inherited from his mother, and I knew that there was no mortgage on the home. I looked her square in the eyes and told her the thing I'd been thinking for at least 2 weeks in case I heard bad news or Jason had to go to jail. I told her that I'd give her money for rent and whatever she needed for herself if she gave me custody of Lucas. She and I both knew what it was, and it was me giving her money to go away. It was a test, too, to see how much she cared about her son, my grandson. She had a husband who was going to jail, and she had many problems, and I figured if she tried to use a baby as a pawn in her games, she probably didn't care too much about his well-being. I was right. Krissy said she would sign whatever I needed to sign. She gave me a figure and said it's probably for the best that Lucas came to live with Rick and me. We had resources, and with Jason going to prison, she was unable to provide for Lucas. Then she got in her car and left, promising to bring Lucas the next day. I could not believe it had been that easy. I was shocked and saddened by how little Krissy seemed to care for her son. She must be the most selfish person I've literally ever met. Rick came home and I told him the news. He was actually pretty happy, I think that, deep down. He's always wanted to help raise a kid, and I'm over the moon, of course. I probably won't sleep tonight because I'll be preparing everything for little Lucas. Update number 4. Hey guys, I know it's been a long time, and this is just a small little update. It's been almost a year since Lucas came to live with us. One of my cousins is a family lawyer, so the process wasn't so bad. She told us exactly what we needed to do, so we filed the request for a court order, dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's, and in a few months had the final order and were given custody. We hired someone to stay with Lucas during the day, a woman whose mother I knew growing up and who has a baby of her own. She brings her son over to our house and takes care of both of them there. So far, it's been working out great, but that could all change. Tomorrow, Jason gets out of jail, and I'm scared about what's going to happen. I haven't spoken to him since he was arrested, and his dad tells me things from time to time, that he's okay in jail, but that's it. It's hard for me to imagine him there, and I don't like it. I wonder if he'll be different. I'll let you know what happens next. Final update. So, Jason did not come home straight to our house like I expected. It was actually a few days before he stopped by. I didn't know what to expect, and neither did he. From the looks of it, he looked different. His hair was long, he had lost weight, there were circles under his eyes. When he came in, he asked to see Lucas, and he held him for a while and thanked me, and said that he'd take over for me and asked me to get Lucas things together. I just stared. It finally occurred to me that neither Krissy nor his dad had told him anything, and I asked Rick to come to the living room. We sat down and I told Jason that Lucas was not going anywhere. Krissy had given us custody, and he asked how she could do that without his permission. He was turning red in the face, and I asked him if he'd really not given his permission. He said she'd brought some forms for him to sign, and he signed them without even reading them, and a few weeks later, he gets a letter about a change of his marital status. Those were divorce papers, and the custody papers must have been there too. He had not heard from Krissy since then, and she completely just ghosted him. Jason said okay. Well, he'd still be there every day to see Lucas, and I said don't be so sure. He looked at me like, what are you talking about? I don't want you to be around Lucas, I said. I don't trust you. He looked hurt and started to cry, and he said that Lucas was his son, and he had a right to see him. He begged me. I told him what the family lawyer told me. Jason had a criminal record now and needs to talk to a judge if he wanted to arrange visitation rights. I paused and I let that sink in. Then I told him that I'd make him a deal. If he promised that he wasn't engaged in any illegal activities and agreed to work on himself, I would let him see Lucas once a week. I asked if it's 100% was legal and he was quiet. "Wow, you cut that out and then we'll talk," I said. He asked me how he would work on himself and therapy, I said. Job training. Maybe there's a 12-step program for people who are pathological liars. He could start by finding honest work and attending a workshop for parents who lost custody of their kids. I told him that there was a workshop starting that weekend, and he said he'd think about it, and I said, "No, you're going. If you want to be in Lucas's life, you'll go." He looked taken back, but he nodded and said, "Okay." And then I said, "It's time for you to leave now. Lucas needs a bath, and I don't want you around him until I know you can be trusted." Jason left, and Rick and I gave Lucas his bath. I was shaking. It was like all emotion I'd been carrying around since I got the call from Jason asking me for money were finally leaving me. I don't know if it'll work out. I don't know if Jason can do the work he needs to do to be a father to Lucas. But my priority right now is Lucas, making sure I do what's best for him. I want him to grow up knowing right from wrong, and I want him to know that he can trust the people closest to him to tell the truth. No lies, no cheats, and stealing, and he means everything to me, and I'll do anything to keep him safe. Well, OP's son is finally released from jail, and then he finds out he doesn't have custody of his boy. A lot of people in the comment section were actually really upset about that because he couldn't get visitations, but in my opinion, I think OP did everything she needed to do to provide for that baby because nobody else was. And well, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be stealing from your job like that and end up in jail when you have a family to look after. And yes, some of the comments were saying tough times lead to stuff like that, but remember guys, this wasn't his first rodeo. He was already caught before at another job selling stuff as well. So I do want to know your opinion on that. Go ahead, drop it down below in the comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every single day. And if you guys want daily videos, go ahead, drop a subscribe down below, and also let me know in the comment section if you guys would be interested in t-shirts. I'm printing them up right now, and it's going to say, "It's cool to be kind." Have a great day, guys. Let me know in the comments, and yeah, it's cool to be kind. Peace.